Have you ever stopped to wonder what truly happened on the night Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha? Not just the popular version, the one where he simply attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, but the real, raw, and profound transformation that shook the foundation of existence itself. Most of us think we know the story. A prince, weary of suffering, renounces his kingdom, undergoes years of extreme asceticism, and finally sits in meditation beneath a sacred tree. Then, in one night, he transcends suffering and awakens. But what if I told you that's only the surface? What if the truth of his enlightenment is far deeper than we ever imagined? So deep, it could change everything we believe about reality, consciousness, and the universe. Picture this. Siddhartha sits in utter stillness, unmoved by hunger, fatigue, or fear. The night is vast, the air thick with silence. His breath slows, his mind sharpens, and one by one, the illusions that have blinded humanity for eons begin to unravel before his very eyes. The first thing he realizes is the true nature of suffering, not just the pain of the body, not just the sorrows of the mind, but suffering as the very fabric of conditioned existence. He sees how beings, lifetime after lifetime, are trapped in an endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, bound by their cravings, their desires, their aversions. He sees himself, not just as Siddhartha, but as countless lives before, kings and beggars, warriors and monks, lovers and enemies. Then, as the night deepens, he perceives the interconnected web of all existence. He sees how every action, every thought, every word echoes through the universe, shaping the past, present, and future in ways beyond human comprehension. This is the law of karma, not as a mere belief, but as an undeniable cosmic truth. But then, something even more extraordinary happens. As the last shadows of ignorance dissolve, he gazes into the very nature of reality itself, and what he finds is beyond words, beyond form, beyond self. There is no I, no you, no separation between the observer and the observed. There is only awareness, luminous and infinite, beyond birth and death, beyond suffering, beyond the grasp of the human mind. This is Nirvana, and in that moment, as the first light of dawn breaks over the horizon, Siddhartha Gautama is no longer just a man. He has become the Buddha, the awakened one. Imagine opening your eyes after such a realization. Imagine walking through the world, knowing that all the struggles, all the fears, all the clinging were illusions, that there was never anything to attain, never anything to lose. Now, ask yourself, if this truth was so powerful, so transformative, that it changed a single man into the most enlightened being in history, what could it mean for us? What could it mean for you? The Buddha's realization was not just for him, it was for all of us. He saw through the illusion so that we too could awaken. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe in. Feel the air filling your lungs. Breathe out. Feel it leaving your body. Pay attention. For a brief moment, there is only this, just the sensation of breath, nothing more. But here's the question. What is real? The air, the body, the mind that's observing all of this? Or is everything just an illusion? For thousands of years, we have lived under the assumption that the world around us is solid, permanent, and real. We believe in objects, in people, in time. We fight for things. We cling to our identities. We chase after pleasure and run from pain. But what if I told you that everything you know is not as it seems? This is what the Buddha realized on the night of his enlightenment. As he sat beneath the Bodhi tree, he saw through the great illusion, the illusion of permanence, the illusion of a fixed self, the illusion of reality itself. He realized that what we call the world is not made of things, but of experiences, not objects, but sensations, fleeting, ever-changing, impossible to hold on to. Think about it. Everything you see, hear, touch, taste, and smell is not the thing itself, but your mind interpreting signals. The warmth of the sun on your skin, the sound of the wind through the trees, the taste of food on your tongue. These are not solid realities, but transient sensations arising and vanishing in an instant. Like waves on the surface of the ocean, they appear, they move, they disappear. And here's the most astonishing part. Nothing exists on its own. Nothing has an independent, fixed existence. The Buddha called this dependent origination, the truth that all things arise because of causes and conditions, and when those conditions change, they vanish. The flower blooms because of the sun, the rain, the soil. Take one element away, and it withers. Your thoughts, your emotions, your very identity, everything you call you, exists only in relation to everything else. Now, imagine looking at the world through this lens. Imagine realizing that everything you have ever held onto, your fears, your desires, even your very sense of self, is just a passing phenomenon, like a dream that dissolves upon waking. Modern science is now catching up to what the Buddha discovered over 2,500 years ago. In quantum physics, we learn that matter is not solid, but a field of probabilities, shifting and changing based on observation. Particles exist in multiple states until they are measured, and the moment you try to grasp reality, it slips through your fingers, just as the Buddha taught. So, if nothing is truly separate, if everything is interconnected, impermanent, and empty of a fixed self, then what does that mean for us? It means we no longer have to suffer, we no longer have to cling, we no longer have to be trapped by illusions. The Buddha's realization was not meant to be just an abstract truth, it was meant to set us free. Close your eyes for a moment. Listen, not to your thoughts, not to the labels your mind creates, just listen. Maybe there's a distant sound, maybe silence. For a split second before your mind names it, before it judges it, there is just the pure experience. This is what the Buddha realized. Reality, as we know it, is not just fleeting, it is divided into two ways of knowing. The first is direct knowing. It is pure, immediate, unfiltered. It is the way a newborn experiences the world, the way animals move through life, the way an enlightened being perceives existence. When sound arises, it is just sound. When color appears, it is just color. There is no judgment, no thought, no separation. It is simply what is. But then, there is the second way, indirect knowing. And this is where things become complicated. Indirect knowing is where the mind steps in, taking raw perception and covering it with layers of memory, language, and concepts. It is where we start to compare, to judge, to tell stories about reality rather than experiencing it as it truly is. Think about this. You see a rose. In direct knowing, there is only the vivid red, the delicate shape, the presence of the flower in this very moment. But in indirect knowing, that's when the mind takes over. This is a rose, it says. Roses are beautiful. They smell sweet. My grandmother loved roses. This reminds me of the time I visited her garden. Do you see what just happened? The mind, instead of simply witnessing the rose, has turned it into a story, a memory, a concept. And this is where suffering begins. Because the moment we move from direct knowing to indirect knowing, we begin to grasp, we begin to cling, we attach meaning, emotion, identity, and with attachment comes fear of loss. The Buddha saw this with perfect clarity. He saw that the reason we suffer is not because of the world itself, but because of the way our minds distort it. We live in our interpretations, not in reality. Now here's the most profound part. We can free ourselves. At any moment, we can return to direct knowing. We can see, hear, feel without letting the mind interfere. We can step out of the stories and into the present. This is the essence of meditation, not just sitting with eyes closed, but learning to experience life directly, without the filters of thought and judgment. to see a rose without turning it into a memory, to hear the wind without turning it into a song of nostalgia, to taste, to touch, to live without the endless commentary of the mind. And when we do this, something miraculous happens. Suffering fades. Fear dissolves. The world reveals itself as it truly is. Vibrant, luminous, ever-changing. The Buddha did not just teach this truth, he lived it. And now we have the chance to live it too. The question is, can you step beyond the mind? Can you return to the pure, direct knowing of this very moment? For centuries, we have believed that the physical world exists independently of us. We have mapped the stars, measured atoms, and built machines to control nature. We have tried to define reality in terms of objects, things we can see, touch, and quantify. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if the fundamental mistake we made was assuming that mind and matter are separate? That the world out there is solid, fixed, and independent of the one experiencing it? The Buddha saw through this illusion over 2,500 years ago. What we call the material world is not an objective, independent reality. It is an ever-changing interaction of causes, conditions, and perception. Reality is not made of things. It is made of relationships. Consider this. When scientists observe light, it behaves like a particle. But when it is left unobserved, it behaves like a wave. This isn't just a theory. It's the foundation of quantum mechanics. The very act of observation changes reality. This discovery shocked the scientific world. But for the Buddha, it was not surprising at all. He had already realized that what we perceive as reality is simply the mind organizing fleeting sensations, assigning meaning, and creating the illusion of a stable world. And this realization changes everything, because if reality is not fixed, if observation shapes what we experience, then we are not just passive beings moving through an objective universe. We are co-creators of our own reality. Our thoughts, our perceptions, our consciousness itself play a role in shaping the world we live in. The Buddha taught that our suffering does not come from the world itself, but from the way we grasp at it, the way we insist on seeing it as permanent, separate, and outside of us. But when we begin to see the truth, that everything is interconnected, impermanent, and shaped by awareness, something shifts. We stop clinging. We stop fearing. We stop fighting against a reality we thought was fixed. Instead, we begin to move with it, flow with it, awaken within it. So what does this mean for us? It means that our mind is not just a witness, it is a participant. It means that the way we see the world determines the world we experience. And the Buddha's message is clear. Wake up, see through the illusion, because once you do, once you truly see, you will never experience reality the same way again. Life is full of suffering. At some point, we all feel it. Pain, loss, fear, the weight of existence pressing down on us. But why? Why do we suffer? Buddha spent years searching for the answer, and what he realized was simple, yet profound. Suffering does not come from the world itself. It comes from within us, from our attachment. We crave permanence in an impermanent world. We want love to last forever. We want success without failure. We want our youth, our beauty, our health to never fade. But nothing in this life stays the same. Everything changes. And that is the root of suffering. Imagine holding a rope, gripping it tightly, and suddenly something pulls it away. The more you resist, the more it burns. That pain is not from the rope itself. It's from the way you're holding on. This is what we do in life. We hold on to relationships, hoping they'll never change. We hold on to money, fearing we'll lose it. We hold on to our identity, afraid of who we might become. But life is like a river. It flows whether we accept it or not. And the more we resist the current, the more we struggle. Buddha taught that the path to freedom is not in holding on. It is in letting go. Let go of the belief that things must be a certain way. Let go of the fear of change. Let go of the illusion that anything in this world is truly yours to keep. This does not mean we should not love, or care, or try. It means we should love without attachment, give without expectation, live without fear. Imagine watching the sunset. You don't try to hold on to it. You don't demand that it stays in the sky just a little longer. You simply watch, appreciate, and accept when it fades. That is how we must live. Life is not about escaping pain, but understanding it. Pain is a teacher. Loss reminds us to cherish. Change reminds us that nothing can truly be possessed. Buddha did not promise a life without suffering, but he showed a way to end the suffering we create for ourselves. What if I told you that the world you experience isn't the real world? That your suffering isn't coming from outside, but from within? Buddha realized something that science is only now beginning to understand. The mind does not simply reflect reality, it creates it. Think about it. Two people can go through the exact same situation. One finds peace, the other finds misery. Why? Because suffering is not in the world, it is in how we see the world. Your thoughts are not just passive reflections. They shape your perception, they dictate your emotions, and over time, they form the very foundation of your reality. Neuroscience tells us that every thought strengthens a pathway in the brain. The more you think in a certain way, the deeper that pathway becomes. Fear, doubt, worry, they are not just emotions, they are habits of the mind. And here's something even more incredible. Studies show that 95% of your thoughts and behaviors are unconscious. That means most of your suffering isn't even something you choose. It's automatic, built into you by years of conditioning. So what does this mean? Are we trapped in our suffering? No. It means we can reprogram our own minds. We can change our thoughts the same way we train a muscle, through practice, discipline, and awareness. This is the true purpose of Buddhist meditation. It is not just about relaxation. It is not about escaping the world. It is about transforming it. When you meditate, you are not simply sitting still. You are reshaping your mind. You are training yourself to observe your thoughts instead of being controlled by them. You are stepping out of the cycle of unconscious suffering and into awareness. Imagine a storm. If you stand in the middle of it, you are tossed and turned, struggling against the wind and rain. But if you step back, if you watch from a distance, you see the storm for what it is, just passing clouds in an endless sky. Your mind is the sky. Your thoughts are just the weather. They come, they go, but they do not define you. When you truly understand this, suffering loses its power. Fear loses its grip. You stop reacting. You stop clinging. You begin to see the world as it is, not as your mind has been trained to see it. And in that moment, you are free. Imagine a life where fear could no longer control you, where anxiety, doubt, and suffering no longer dictated your actions. Imagine moving through life with complete peace, no matter what happens. What if loss didn't break you? What if failure didn't define you? What if rejection didn't leave a wound? This is not just an impossible dream. This is the path the Buddha walked, and it is a path you can walk too. True freedom is not about wealth, success, or even knowledge. It is about seeing through the illusion that binds us. We spend our lives clinging to people, to possessions, to identities we believe are ours. We say, this is my body, my name, my success, my pain. But is it really? Your body changes with time. Your thoughts rise and fall like waves. Your emotions shift like the seasons. Even your name, your achievements, the things you hold dear, they are temporary, fleeting, beyond your control. So, what truly belongs to you? The moment you realize that nothing can truly be possessed, you step into freedom. You are no longer a prisoner of fear because you have nothing to lose. You are no longer afraid of failure because you no longer measure yourself by worldly success. You no longer resist change because you see that change is the very nature of life. This is enlightenment, not some mystical state reserved for monks and sages. It is the simple yet profound realization that you are not your thoughts. You are not your fears. You are not the stories your mind tells you. Buddha did not become free by escaping the world. He became free by seeing it clearly. He saw that suffering does not come from life itself, but from our attachment to how we think life should be. What if you could let go? What if you could experience the world without clinging to it? Love without fear of loss? Give without expecting return? Exist without needing to prove anything? So, what now? Does seeking enlightenment mean you have to give up everything? Leave behind your life, your family, your dreams, and retreat to a cave in the mountains? Absolutely not. Buddha did not teach escape. He taught awareness. He did not ask us to abandon the world, but to see it clearly. The real journey to enlightenment is not about running away from life. It is about walking through life with open eyes. It is about training the mind to detach from illusions and embrace reality as it is. So, where do you begin? Start simple. Observe your thoughts. Watch them like passing clouds. When you feel anger, fear, or sadness, don't fight it. Just notice it. Where does it come from? What are you holding on to? Catch yourself when you cling to an idea, a person, an outcome. Ask yourself, is this truly permanent, or am I just afraid to let go? Understand this. Nothing you cling to will last. No success, no failure, no love, no loss. Everything changes. The more you resist this truth, the more you suffer. The more you accept it, the freer you become. So, practice letting go. Meditate, even if just for 5 minutes a day. Sit still, breathe, feel the present moment. Watch your mind as it drifts into the past, into the future, into stories and fears and expectations. Gently bring it back, over and over again. Because here's the truth. You are not your thoughts. You are not your fears. You are not your past. You are something far greater, something beyond words, beyond concepts, beyond the limits of the mind. And once you see this, nothing will ever be the same again.